Hello there, this is Kestell Duxbury, the editor of the Priori.co.uk. Today I've had a bit of a day where I've had to go into work on a Saturday, which is always exciting. So I was there at 8 o'clock this morning. Back home now, which is nice. It's only 10 o'clock, so I can't moan too much. And I was going to record the Priori podcast by myself this week. For a couple of reasons. I've just had a completely mad week. It's been really, really hectic, and I decided that this was probably going to be the easiest way of doing it, easiest way of getting something out there, and also maybe because maybe a few people don't know a huge amount about me and how the Priori started and stuff like that. So I thought I'd go backwards a little bit and talk about what's been happening in the news and basically what's left to come in the Priori this month. So what has been happening? I have had a couple of technical difficulties. Normally I record a podcast through my laptop through a couple of external microphones I bought, and it's been alright. I think it's worked okay. The sound quality has been a bit varied depending on where we've recorded, but when we've been recording, and so this morning I was just going to record straight into it. I've got a completely dead house, so I thought, okay, this is perfect. So let's do that. I plugged the mic in, and of course the program doesn't like it. It's not accepting it. So I think, well, what else can I do? And I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but on YouTube, what a lot of young YouTubers and vloggers have started to do is use a set of headphones that you get with mobile phones these days, or you could buy them separately that have a microphone built in. And I thought, well, that seems like a good idea. So I thought I'll download an app that I can do that, and I'll just do it through my phone, and that way I can basically plug it straight in, do a bit of editing on my laptop, and then can put it straight out. And I must admit, I've just listened back to the first bit, and it sounds okay. It doesn't sound too bad. I can't moan. But that would be the normal way I do it. And the second sort of technical hitch I've had this morning is our internet is down in our house, which means that normally what I would do is have a bit of a list going, and I would talk through, and I would see what's in the news and talk off there. And normally that again works quite well. And when Harry and I recorded at BPP, that worked really well. And he had his iPad going, and we were doing lots of different things. So yeah, on the whole, that has worked in the past. I have neither of these things today. So I thought I would go back and briefly talk about how the Priori started, what the plan was, and how it's grown. And initially, I had this idea. I had an idea before the Priori, actually, and it was called the Academics Board of Discussion. And what it was going to be was, if you had a university email or login, anything like that, you could access the University Board of Discussion, and there would be a very small subscription charge to a university. Well, that was going to be the funding plan. And then the aim was we would post, whether they were academic articles or not. They could just be broadcast journalism articles or news articles, or maybe sort of conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and either debunking it or having an academic discussion about it. So basically trying to ground some theory into news stories, because I think that's what's been missing from the news for decades. I don't think it's a new thing. I think when the piece came out about Thatcher and Reagan's neoliberal world project, there were probably a lot of people on Google thinking on what neoliberalism and it's these sort of terms can be difficult to pin down if you don't have a grounding, because of course if you want to discuss liberalism, it's anywhere between Francis Fukuyama and John Stuart Mill, and that is a very broad range. And I'm under no illusion that these things are difficult and these things are complex. But the point of the academics board of discussion was going to be, it was going to be sectioned out, and I had this idea that it was going to be a bit like Reddit, and it was all going to be sort of headed at the top with all these sort of sub themes through the side, and you basically find your way around by your areas of interest and areas of expertise. And it would almost be self-perpetuating, and it would be what I saw to be where academics either got their news or got something afterwards, but it was a lot broader than... The only thing that I think is mainstream enough that does this at the minute is maybe The Economist magazine. I don't think the Financial Times does it, but The Economist does. And it will take business, economic, politics, and world affairs, and it will basically put a economic spin on it and give you the economic news behind all these news stories. And I thought that the academic board of discussion would help these crossovers and help this be a bit broader. That was the initial idea. And it really started to be kind of quite difficult to attain, because I came up with that idea in July 2015 as I was just looking to complete my masters. So I finished in September, and so this would have been a period of dissertation writing, and it didn't. I started it and it didn't quite work the way I wanted to. There were certain things that, of course, there were lots of rights and when I looked more into the logistics of trying to secure even just something like the articles and stage publications, that was hard. That was really, really difficult to do. So that finished. That was sort of dead in the water. It didn't really get off the ground. But I sort of persisted with this idea of wanting to create something, wanting to create this website, and the Priori stemmed from that. And it started off as a Wix account. Wix are an online hosting, free website design tool, basically. And I'm not a web designer. I don't ever would pretend to be. But I went onto Wix and I wanted... I don't know if any of you would have remembered, but the way the Huffington Post started was the most read news articles had a bigger space on the front page, but there was very little else on there. It was just these blocks. And it reminded me very much of sort of the Windows 10 cloud tile idea. And I liked that. And I liked having a page of news or a page of interesting articles. So I kind of did that, and I started having 8 tiles. And 8 tiles worked quite well, and there was some nice animation. And it was the contributor's name, contributor's picture, and then the article thing. And we were slightly restricted on space. And it didn't look the best, but it didn't make the content any less. And I initially started by saying, I created the website. I basically created this website before I told anybody about it. I created it, and I created a load of sort of spoof articles. I copied and pasted things off things I'd written in the past, and had this template. This template I wanted to copy. And I then sent a Facebook message to, if I remember correctly, 39 people, so it would have been 40 of us, who I felt might have wanted to do something. All from different political spheres, or from different persuasions, people with different interests. I mainly stuck to the political side, to be honest. That's the thing I know about, and it's the thing I could edit easily. And I wanted to sort of keep it within politics a bit. And the first issue was really good, and kind content-wise, it was good. And the problem is, what Wix doesn't give you is it doesn't give you a lot of analytics. It doesn't give you readership. So soon after that, we started a Facebook page, and then Twitter followed after. And Twitter was slow to get going. But Facebook really took off. It started with sort of 100 odd members quite quickly. And yeah, Facebook works well for that sort of thing. We were sharing stories, and now I can't remember in which order this was, whether the Facebook thing came first or whether Bronwyn and Shannon did. Now, Shannon initially Facebook messaged me, and Shannon actually is someone I went to school with, and her, well, both of our friends, Bronwyn Posner, and they'd sent me this sort of joint email. They started this little group, and they said, we're interested in doing some design work, because we think the content is really good, but the design could use some improvement. I was like, okay, what do you have in mind? And they said, well, we think it needs to be hosted differently. We think the website needs changing, and we can make it look a lot nicer. We can do a lot of the picture editing and stuff like that. I was like, okay, well, if you design me a website, like a draft website for last month's issue, I'll have a look at it. And they came up with something very recognisable to what the Priori is today. The looks and the layout was outstanding in terms of the way it. I thought it looked so much more professional. I thought the 5 sort of feature article idea was good. I thought then the rest of them was fine as well. And I thought the whole idea of having an archive, because the problem with the Wix site is I could only really hold 8 pieces at a time, and I didn't like that. I did have this idea of making it a subscription piece, so you had to subscribe to get all the archive, and whilst that was nice, or potentially could have been nice, we didn't have the readership, and I thought that was sort of unfair. So we started this, and lots of things and the changes and stuff like that, and they are really, really good. The only problem is the design is sometimes slightly out of my reach. I do try and do things that I then mess up and go, oh, bloody hell, like, that's not quite how I wanted it to be. But particularly Bronwyn has been incredibly good at keeping on top of that. She's helped me a lot when it's come to learning about the licenses for photos and images and stuff like that, because that's a minefield when it comes to editing. And it's basically looking at how we make how we move on, try and make some money off it, and anything like that. Now, the problem with all these things is it's quite. I find it quite vulgar to go, I want to make money off this, because it seems like I'm sort of trying to sort of gain something for nothing. I think I've put a lot of hours into the Priori, but don't get me wrong, it's something I've enjoyed. So I have a slight amount of guilt. It's like whenever you hear of musicians being paid for their first gig and stuff like that, and again they feel a bit like a fraud because they're just doing something that they love, and that can be the way I feel, and I often do feel like that. We've got a gratuity box idea. Does work quite well, and one of my colleagues at my day job, Chris, got me into Scroobius Pip Distraction Pieces podcast. Now, Scroobius Pip had a top 40 song with Dan the Sack called Thou Shalt Always Kill. Song that I liked, and I've heard a bit of Scroobius Pip work in the past. I looked back through his Distraction Pieces podcast. There were probably 60 episodes I'd missed. I wasn't really into podcasting from that point of view. I was into music podcasts. So Don Diablo did a podcast every week. Oliver Heldens did Held Deep Records, and that came out weekly, and to basically listen to new music. But I'd never really got into spoken podcasts apart from the Adam and Joe show, which was on Six Music back in the day when I was 14. I apprenticed out to picture framers, And Saturday mornings I would be there and we'd have Six Music on and listen to the Adam and Joe show. I loved it. It completely spoke to me. It opened me up to a new world of music that was in the past. It broadened my horizons in terms of humour a great deal, and I thought these people had such a great rapport that that I sort of always aspired to. And after that, I did go off and do some hospital radio and some hosting, and then did some DJing afterwards. So I'm quite used to that. But I got into Scroobius Pip's podcast and hosted some brilliant people. I must say that I think the podcast he did with Sarah Pascoe is one of my favourites. I can easily listen to that over and over again because it's so interesting. And he did one with Adam Buxton. I love Adam Buxton, and again, Adam Buxton being from the Adam and Joe show. And then I got into listening to Adam Buxton's new podcast. And I was in London the other day going to some meetings and things like that. And all day I was just listening to podcasts. I was listening to both the Adam and Joe one. I was listening to the Adam Buxton podcast. I listened to some distraction pieces. And then I was also listening to Party Political Broadcast by Matt Ford. I know Matt Ford. So Matt Ford is a comedian from Nottingham. And at uni I got him in to speak because he had also been to Nottingham Trent, and I thought it'd be interesting. The plan was to do a sort of question time style debate, and everybody else dropped out. Matt was the only person we were paying because the advantage for public servants is they can't charge a fee. But he was the only person we were paying, and it all got a bit messy. But anyway, he basically just came and talked to sort of no more than about 15 of us, which was a bit of a shame because he's so funny. He used to work for Labour Party. He's a proper Blairite. But his Party Political Broadcast, I haven't listened to that many of them, regrettably, but I will catch back up, where sort of every month he sits there and talks to genuine political heavyweights. He's had Neil Kinnock on, he's had Farage, Galloway, he had Tony Blair. Like, these are big people in British politics. And the one I listened to, I downloaded one before I went to London, and I listened to it on the train up. It's not very far, sort of an hour journey. And it was Tommy Robinson, former leader of the English Defence League. Great podcast, and if no one's heard of it, I would definitely recommend going on to. I use the app Castbox, which is good, or they're on Acast. You can find all that stuff. But Castbox is pretty good because you can get most things off of it. I think it might actually be by Acast. Anyway, whatever. That particular one I think is really challenging. I think it's a hard thing to listen to in points, but I also think what's really interesting is I don't think Tommy Robinson is quite the monster that everybody wants to perceive him to be. He's a family orientated man. He may have warped views about some things. I mean, I'd just like to go on the record and basically say I wish he was challenged a bit more about his own religious beliefs, because I don't think that was done at all. And I have this view which every belief can be challenged. I think it has to be, really, in order to make the world a better place, to rationalise things. I think believing something for the sake of belief's sake is totally irrational and counterproductive, because it stops us questioning things, it stops us progressing, it stops us wanting to make the world a better place for all, not just for those who believe in a particular doctrine. I know the English Defence League's logo is a cross, but I wanted to know why Christianity was not pulled apart if he is a Christian. I mean, I don't know if the idea was his, and he has said that the EDL has been hijacked in the past few years, but I would have liked to have gone. I would like Matt to really have got into that a bit more, but I understand why I didn't. I think doing it in front of a live studio audience as well, particularly in Britain, where although apparently most of us are atheists now, apparently, or have no belief. That the two should not be confused, because agnosticism and atheism are things that agnostics can often be misrepresented as atheists, and that's unfair to agnostics. It's unfair to atheists. Atheists believe in nothing. Agnostics think there may be something, but maybe don't subscribe to a formal doctrine. And particularly where even so many agnostics and atheists in this country, if you've grown up in this country, have probably been instilled with some form of Christianity or a particular string of Christianity, or it would be people can get very defensive and almost. This is something that I've fallen into the trap of quite a lot before. I know Dara Breen has spoken about this as well, where he says he doesn't do jokes about Islam for two reasons. First of all, he doesn't know enough about it. He does jokes about Catholicism because he knows about Catholicism. He was brought up a Catholic. And also his second thing is his job is not to write you jokes, not to continue to pander to your beliefs and hatred. And it's exactly the same. I get criticised on this at all because I have a friend of mine, and he's probably more critical of Islam than I am, despite I've read the Quran. I'm still not an expert in Islamic theology, and I would never pretend to be at all. I know a bit, but I can be more critical of Christianity because I do know a lot more about Christianity, and I find I'm in a better position. And whilst I'm sure Tommy Robinson knows a bit about Islam, and he did there, he was using particular terms which I must admit I was sat there going, okay, does that mean that or this, and just trying to clarify things in my head. But the difficult thing for a lot of people, I think, is I want to get to the root of this. I think it's also very unfair to just target one religion when I think one particular whilst one particular religion may have strands and offshoots of people who are particularly evil, I don't think that is necessarily true of just one religion. I think that's true of most. Again, this is a difficult thing. When Harry and I were at BPP last week, recording podcast, we did sort of a bit afterwards, which we recorded with one of his colleagues, Cindy, who is a very, very nice Canadian lady. And we talked about who we basically hadn't offended in that podcast, and I said, "Oh, you haven't offended the Sikhs." And there was this very awkward moment where my Hindu friend Harry and me, a white former Christian atheist, basically sit there, well, let's try and offend the Sikhs, and you just didn't know enough, and it was more whimsy than anything, but I haven't put it out just in case, just in case I offend anyone, because I don't want to offend anyone. I think people are quite within their rights to attack me as much as I would feel that I would be within my rights to attack anybody else's belief system. It's part of a debate. I think the moment that swords are drawn, if you lose what makes us sort of human, and we lose a concept of being able to discuss and argue and remain friends. Is that Thomas Jefferson quote of I would never not be friends with anyone because we don't share morals, religion, or philosophical beliefs. Paraphrasing. So that's basically where the podcasting came from. Because I've always liked doing the bits I have done on the radio. I've enjoyed doing them. Wanted to get into radio a lot more at university and didn't. I pursued societies more. So I was treasurer and president of the Politics Society and really enjoyed that. And I'm not going to pretend that was a wrong move, because I think they were good places to be. But I do wish that I did a bit more radio. I really enjoyed doing it. And hope I have opportunities to do more in the future. The thing that podcasts bring is quite an accessible way to get a lot of information out in a very short space of time, and particularly as we're all walking around with headphones in these days, and some people want to listen to spoken word, some people want to listen to music, some do both. I listen to both, so it can be. Some people also can't have to listen to just to a podcast, and I must admit, I was sat there in a pub in Victoria waiting between two interviews basically, and I was nursing a Diet Coke, small Diet Coke that cost me £3. I thought, I'm going to make this last as long as I can. It's an hour to kill, and I'm listening to the Adam Buxton podcast with Louis Theroux, and I'm giggling away like an absolute madman. But I wouldn't have been able to do anything else apart from listen to that. It was so encapsulating. So I appreciate stuff like that. But the point of the podcast was to get people interested, gauge people's response, and also to try and interview some interesting people. I think the one thing that both the Distraction pieces and Adam Buxton's and the Party Political broadcasts have all sort of shown me is that you get an interesting person on and you make a really great podcast because they're interesting people. You can't just talk into a microphone and make yourself interesting. It doesn't quite work like that. You have to have something to say. And particularly for those three, when they have great guests on, really great guests, and one of my favourite podcasts, Scooby Swift, that was apart from the Adam Buxton and the Sarah Pascoe one, is he did one with the late Howard Marks. Just an interesting guy, an interesting, funny guy. And the recording levels on it are shite because he kept moving closer and further away to this mic. And I was listening to it at work once, and at some points I was turning it up and then my ears would get blown out. So it was difficult to listen to, as in the act of actually listening to it was difficult. But in terms of understanding it, the guy was really, really easy to follow, well spoken. I admire Howard Marks, Mr. Nice Guy. It's just a really interesting character. So the podcasting sort of stemmed from there, and I thought the Priori podcast would be a cool name. I know The Guardian do it, I know The Economist do it, and I've listened to a few of those, and they are cool. And if you've got the time to listen to it, it's a very good digest as well, very good digest of news. And I sort of wanted to hit this thing in between what I would describe as comedy and entertainment podcasts do and what news and current affairs podcasts do. Luckily, fortunately I suppose, we've been in a situation where the podcasts have come out at a really turbulent British political time. Oh, sorry, a turbulent time in British politics. It's the way it should be. And we've had to talk about Brexit. There's been nothing else. And apart from, well, I mean, even so, I mean, that you talk about the attacks have been happening in Europe over the past couple of weeks. The terrorist attacks that apparently ISIS soldiers have committed. How true that is, we're not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how intertwined a 17-year-old can get into ISIS, but we'll leave that to the authorities to uncover. The thing I wanted to do was start talking to some interesting people, as well as talk about current affairs. I think we've done a lot of current affairs, and talking to interesting people has always been something I've wanted to do and get people down. So I've got a couple of interesting people I've been to uni with, and lives of trajectories completely different, so far away from when I knew them. Sort of knew them on a day-to-day level, which is great. I think it's really interesting to talk to people like that. So that's what's coming next, and I do hope that we're going to talk slightly less about current affairs, because whilst they are very interesting, they're very short-lived. I know when we had Harry and Jack at the joint recording studios just off King's Cross in London, we were talking about who was going to be the next Prime Minister. And admittedly, Harry did get it right, and he did go for Theresa May. Congratulations, Harry, on that one. But everybody assumed Boris Johnson. And literally 3 days later, he pulled out. So it is very, very short-lived, and it's almost like recording a television show. To go out on a Thursday, record it on a Monday. A week in politics is an awfully long time. And that's what's sort of been difficult. But I wanted to finish this particular podcast. I know it's a slightly more boring one, just listening to my voice. But I want to finish this one talking about the Labour Party. So I'm a member of the Labour Party. If anybody follows me on Twitter, they'll find out I'm the secretary for the Labour Party in North East Bedfordshire, which is where I live. And I've been told a lot of rules and regulations being a secretary and stuff like that. And this leadership election has been a complete farce, in my opinion. And I am a member of Momentum, but how can I put it? I would never want to be seen as being a member of Momentum. I'm a member of Progress. I'd never want to be seen as a member of Progress either. These splinter groups within the party have started to undermine and break the official opposition to the government of the United Kingdom. The election of Jeremy Corbyn, whilst he had a huge mandate, his mandate particularly came from registered supporters, so people who are not fully paid up members. He didn't have the full support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. People were willing to give him to put his name on the ballot. People were willing to hear his ideas and arguments. Jeremy Corbyn is not a breath of fresh air within the Labour Party. Voices like his have forever been in the Labour Party. It's admittedly, his voice has forever been in the modern Labour Party. But we should not be under any illusion that there is anybody in the Labour Party who is younger, any less dynamic, or any less principled. There are people who have different ideas of doing things, but they are still fundamentally social democrats. The whole point is you have to be a social democrat to be a member of the party. People are on about Owen Smith, who is the Labour leadership challenger. He looks significantly more like a Blairite. He's cleaner cut. He's got the suit and the glasses. He looks like a politician. He looks like the sort of politician that we have come to expect. He looks more statesmanlike. He looks like he could walk onto a big stage and be relaxed. Coming from South Wales, that helps him. That's a strong Labour voice. And then people are accusing him of stealing Jeremy Corbyn's policies. they're on the same party. They're in the same party. They are part of the same parliamentary Labour Party. I don't understand why there has been so much animosity towards anybody who's challenged Jeremy Corbyn, because people have said that they don't necessarily agree on Jeremy on absolutely everything, but they think Jeremy is making the Labour Party unelectable to normal voters. People like members of Momentum have gotten behind Jeremy Corbyn and have gone, no, you are wrong, he has the biggest mandate of anybody. The mandate of the 9.8 million people who voted for the Labour Party, the 9.8 million people who voted for their parliamentary representatives, I would argue has a bigger mandate. Because the 250,000 people who voted for Corbyn, fair enough, that's a big mandate within the party, and he may well have grown that party. He may well have got that party over the 500,000 membership mark. I don't think that's a bad thing, but what the Labour Party needs to be is more pragmatic in what their aims are. And I don't see any other logical reason of the Labour Party existing unless they want power, unless they genuinely want to govern, unless they think that them in government is going to make Britain better. And I'm really struggling to understand what members of both Progress and Momentum think is their overall goal. Because at the moment, they are more interested in infighting than uniting and winning power. I am so disgruntled as a Labour Party member, as a Labour Party activist almost, you could call me. Because I personally think Jeremy Corbyn is an excellent person. Do I think everybody else thinks like I do? No, of course not. This is going to sound like a very detached arranged relationship. My stepmother's father's girlfriend came in, and I said, recently after Jeremy Corbyn was elected, this was only probably a couple of weeks later, and they know that I'm a Labour Party member, and they were like, so what do you think of Jeremy Corbyn? I said, I think he's a really interesting voice to have on the ballot. I think he'll have some really interesting ideas. And I said, what do you think? She said, oh, he's awful. Oh, he's awful. I said, okay, why do you think that? Oh, he's awful. He's so, going to take us back to the 70s and all that. Now, I don't agree with that, really. I do think the renationalisation of the railways is a slightly poorly thought through idea, because I think what that actually demonstrates is a fundamental lack of understanding of how the modern railway network is run. And whilst people get very angry that the French and Dutch governments make money off our railway system, it's because they are winning contracts as part of companies that they part own, who used to be state owned. The British government still fundamentally controls Network Rail. It can fundamentally hand out contracts. It can take those away. It doesn't, but it could. Completely renationalise it would be the most ineffective way of running a public transport system. What you need is greater regulation. If you want to make things fairer and you want to basically have greater control, you just need to regulate it. The money, the competition, the competitive element works on these, on say the East Coast Main Line and stuff like that. The competitive element on that works because if the current provider is providing excellent service, never late, fares not going up, good value for money for commuters and travellers, the government should basically be able to go, actually, unless anybody can promise to do something like this and we'll put them on a 12-month contract, we are not willing to let their contract expire. The problem is we've had a very laissez-faire attitude, which is the free market will sort it out and the best service provider will inevitably get in. Well, that isn't quite the way it works. The way it's worked is the cheapest will get in, or the one with the most amount of influence in government will get in. Now that is what I would disagree with. I think most Labour Party members would. But regulation is probably the way the Labour Party should work, not just renationalisation. I don't think people quite understand quite how expensive it is and how difficult that would be to implement. And whilst the term renationalisation means a lot of good for some people, there is a great deal of people who will almost disagree with anything that says renationalisation. Exactly the same when it comes to regulation. Some people will say we don't need regulation, that's just red tape. Well, okay, but you can win people like that. You can do that. You have a greater chance of winning a vote by saying we're going to regulate something and this is how we're going to do it. There's a plan in place. It's not going to cost an awful lot of money either, which is helpful. In fact, you're going to save money. In the way that when you renationalise things, you have to say, okay, we're going to save you money, we're going to maintain a service, and we're going to raise the money to actually renationalise the railways by doing X, Y, and Z. That is altogether a much bigger plan, and people don't trust Labour with the economy anymore. That went. 2010 saw the end of Labour's economic, the trust in the economy. Ed Balls did absolutely no favour to that, and there needs to be a better approach to basically win votes. I hate to say it, but the core idea of being social democrat is to allow the people to have a fundamental voice in this. And whilst at a leadership election stuff, you can say that, there just seems to be something in the party mechanics that's just falling apart. I don't know if anybody's seen, there's a Vice documentary with Jeremy Corbyn, and it's about 15 minutes long. It's worth sort of a lunchtime watch. But Jeremy Corbyn's advisors are not Labour Party, they're not a cog in a Labour machine. They had worked for Momentum, or they were grassroots people, and that's not a bad thing to have in politics. He's got 3 advisors, and they're probably only about 25 each, and these people just don't know how to politic, in inverted commas. They don't understand the power struggle. They don't quite get it. When Jeremy Corbyn's then in the Leader of the Opposition office, and he has proper media advisors training them how to behave at PMQs, that is significantly different. And I'm going to put this out there of why I think Jeremy Corbyn should have stepped down and then be allowed to restand as Labour leader. He should have stepped down. First of all, the Labour Party at the NEC decided that they were going to campaign to stay in Europe, regardless of who the leader was. Whether you agree with that or not, you are the leader of the opposition. You have a duty to your members and to the country to ensure that your party's message is heard. This party message was actually in line with the government. They could have campaigned significantly harder. They had so many more resources than the Leave vote. Genuinely more resources. They had a civil service for most of it. They were putting leaflets out. Labour they brought some big guns out, and I hate to say this, but the most effective piece of I'm going to call it Labour propaganda was from Gordon Brown, and people despise the man. He's the most hated, the least popular living British Prime Minister, and you're sat there and going, you are with genuine scumbags such as David Cameron, and Gordon Brown is so unpopular that you put him in Coventry Cathedral and it's making people cry, and you're going, it's making me cry because Labour have been so ineffective that we've had to wheel out Gordon Brown from retirement. It was a shambles, absolute shambles. The Alan Johnson, we know that Alan Johnson is a superb runner. Alan Johnson was not on that main stage. He was not fighting the Labour cause in the same way that you had big Tories fighting the outs, and David Cameron didn't do enough either. But Jeremy Corbyn has a particular tactic, which is he'll go to constituencies and he will knock on doors, and he's a great local MP. But for me, it showed that he wasn't a national leader. You need to get up on that stage. You need to to genuinely win hearts and minds. And when he says that 7 to 7.5 of me believes that we should stay in Europe, not enough. Whether people want to troll up your path or not, you just have to be dedicated to the cause now. And it fundamentally, I think it lost Labour votes. I think it lost in votes. And I think it showed ineffectiveness. Now, he should have gone then. And I had stayed up. I'd been counting the votes that night. And I was genuinely waiting. I was waiting for him to go. 8:15 a.m. I was just waiting for it to fall. He didn't. He hung on. So all the time, we've had David Cameron just resign. Everybody's expecting him to go, and he hangs on. And it just diverted so much attention away from the Tories. He could have just hit them where it needed, and he put his leadership before the party, in my opinion. I mean, nobody has to agree with this, but I think the second reason he should have stood down was the vote on Trident. He failed to whip it, which I think would have been the sign of a strong leader. I think it showed the sign of an ineffective, weak leader who wasn't willing to use his whip. He'd never been whipped before. There's a book I've got called How to Be a Government Whip, and I can't remember who her name was, but she was a whip under Gordon Brown. And he is pointed out in that book very, very early on that you just do not even bother approaching them. They cannot be whipped. They will not be whipped. Jeremy Corbyn cannot be whipped. He will vote with his feet. He'll vote with his heart. Brilliant sort of person to have around. Not the leader of the opposition. You need to get everything on one side. You're trying to unite the party. You're trying to unite the country against the government. You're trying to get them out. And if there is a party line that has been followed for a number of years, and Jeremy thinks differently, you have a leader going against the party. It just looks dreadful. And I think the thing that happened with Trident is it won so overwhelmingly. So overwhelmingly. There is a C&D movement in Britain. And don't get me wrong, I think after Brexit, I think getting rid of nuclear weapons whilst you've started to break some ties and things like that, I think that could have been a bit dangerous, to be honest, but we didn't. So that's what happened, really. But I think I still think he could have been stronger. I felt he could have been just more effective as a leader, and it's been really disheartening to see. But that's the way it is. Now, whether Owen Smith will win or not, I think it's fairly unlikely. I think he has a big majority now. In my little local party, I heard the term Red Tory at the last meeting well over 100 times. And I think it was yesterday, the senior Labour MPs. Oh, excuse me. This is how boring the Labour Party has been at the minute. It's making me yawn. But senior Labour MPs have said that they would be willing to split the party if Jeremy is voted back in. And I think there is a real fear to anybody who thinks that this government needs an opposition, that there just isn't one. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous to an awful lot of people. The most vulnerable in society could be severely hurt if there is not a Labour Party. And I think we need to have strong leadership, and I don't think that's coming from either Owen Smith or Jeremy Corbyn, to be honest. I genuinely don't look within that party and see any more than maybe 2 potential candidates, and these are them as standing. One who I wanted last time was Dan Jarvis, and he didn't stand. Unfortunately, ruled himself out very early. I understand why. His young children. He's not particularly old himself. He's only early 40s. Within the political game, he's not that old. 2 young children. Recently remarried after the death of his first wife. Going for the leader of the it's fast. He probably wants to settle things down, and he doesn't. He has difficulty with his local Labour Party, because his Labour Party is in Barnsley, and he's from Nottingham, and the Nottingham miners didn't stand with the Barnsley miners in the 70s, and he's still being punished for that. And like, I don't think he was even, if he was born, he was in his infancy, but this is the sort of thing that people hold grudges for. But anyway, whatever. Dan Jarvis would be my first choice, and I think somebody like Chuka Umunna wouldn't have been a bad bet. But I think particularly after the when he realised how much leadership was going to delve into his private life, he cut it short. But I think he will need to do a bit of evaluating. What does scare me is if you have people like Tristram Hunt coming out and doing it and doing well, because I do think someone like Tristram Hunt is potentially really dangerous to the party, to all sides, because if there's not a split from what we'd maybe traditionally call the Blairites, or I don't like this term, but the moderates in the party, those on the left, the Corbynites, will split, and there will be a new party formed. And don't get me wrong, they could be the next opposition, but a 3-party system doesn't work in Britain. And I think it would be so pointless, because there'd be so much infighting, that if there was ever a point where let's call them the moderates and the Corbynites were in an election against each other, and the moderates got 20% of the votes and the Corbynites got 15%, and they could form a workable government, they would just form a government. But there would be so much infighting and spatting that the Corbynites would then be basically just completely almost disregarded by the inverted commas faithful. So I think there's an awful lot of damage in the Labour Party, and I think there's a lot that will be done in the future. So anyway, this has been the Priori podcast. It's what date is it? It's the end of July today. It's the I've just got them written there as well. It's the 30th of July, and that is basically what is happening within the Labour Party. I'm not going to go into the terrorist attacks and stuff like that, because otherwise we're going to get depressed of how many we're going to continue to have, because I don't think these are going to stop anytime soon, I'm afraid. But that is what's happening, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. I know it's just been with me, but I hope there's been some interesting things. I hope you've learned a bit more about the Priori, and a bit more about sort of how this all started, and talking a bit more about the Labour leadership contest, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time that I comment on it. So please just bear with me. So anyway, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll catch up with you in the next week or two. Cheers, bye.